I think everybody did like practice.
I think.
I'm impressed they did as far as they did. I thought they
All
would.
right, good morning, everybody. 9:32 on Wednesday, May 16th for official meeting of the Planning Committee. Thank you all for coming. As a reminder, meeting is recorded and broadcast on YouTube. And for all to see live or recorded on another date. My name is Chris Wallen, representing the city of Schenectady. As we do every morning, we go around the room.
All right, Greg Wixer, Region 1 DOT.
Kim Lambert, Saratoga County.
Dave Monteverdi, Albany County Airport Authority.
John Scavo, Town of Clifton Park.
Melissa Cherubino, City of Waterville.
Mike Butler, City Mechanical. Rob Leslie, Town of Bethlehem.
John Schneiderman, Port of Albany.
Mike Dutry, City of Saratoga Springs.
Chris Marini, City of Troy. Mark Castiglione, Regional Planning Commission.
Tom Houlihan, City of Rensselaer.
Mike Bodett, Thruway Authority.
Sandy Miswis, Capital Region Transportation Council.
Terry Warren, also.
Mike Tello, City of Saratoga Springs.
Melissa Shanley, CDTA.
Jim DeJoy, Public.
Andrew Tracy, Transportation Council. Ethan Townsend, Transportation Council.
Adam McCarville, Transportation Council.
Laura Robertson, Town of Niskayuna. Nicole McGrath, Federal Highway Administration.
Don Amati, Federal Highway Administration.
Anna Rizzo, Town of Sand Lake.
Guy Taskman, New York State DOT.
Lisa Orlando, Albany County.
And listening virtually, we've got Christy Shea of the Transportation Council, Chris Cook of New York State DEC, Dan Rodriguez, Town of East Greenbush, Ed Snyder of GPI, Gloria Huzinga from Town of Malta, Ian Headley Cole from CHA, Jeff Pangburn from Creighton Manning, Joe Semino from CHA. There's someone who's identified as Ledge. If you could put your affiliation in the chat, that would be great. Mike Williams from CDTA, Parker Morris from the Transportation Council, Peter Comenzo from the Town of Rotterdam, Peter Nitson from Schenectady County, Rosa Torino from Albany County, Ryan Riper from the Town of Wilton, Sharon Butler from the City of Cohoes, Teresa LaSalle from the Transportation Council, Tim Lane from the Village of Manans, Bill Trudeau from the City of Albany, and our Ledge person was Susan Lauliard from Albany County. If I missed anybody, if you could put your name and affiliation in the chat, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Moving on to visitor issues, we have no one registered to speak today. So we'll move on to administration and adoption of the previous meeting minutes from April 1st. Need a motion to adopt, accept these.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mark, second. Second, Kim. All right, all in favor? Any opposed or abstaining? Thank you. Next, we have a draft performance and expenditure report, October 1st, 2025 to March 31st, 2026. Sandy.
Yes, thanks. So just real quick, this is our semi-annual report on the progress on our grants. So I just wanted to walk through, sorry, as I'm setting up here. There it goes. Just wanted to walk through some of the highlights of the performance report over the last 6 months. Obviously, since we began, this covers the period October 1 of 2025 through the end of March. We've adopted a new unified planning work program, began work on update of a Title VI analysis, revised a public participation plan, which is out for public review right now. We're continuing in our on-demand count program. We've done a lot of assistance through the count program, and then there's more to offer. Our staff has put some time into updating our STEP model. We have updated traffic analysis zones and worked with CDRPC to forecast population, households, and employment by TAZ. So that work is feeding into a larger model update. We hosted a webinar on trail planning and utility corridors in partnership with National Grid. We had over 150 attendees to that webinar, so it was great. It was statewide. For the tip, we've done 26 administrative modifications and 17 amendments. We've continued our coordination with NISDOT and Schenectady County on the various planning and environmental linkage studies that have been going on in the region. We have completed the Capital Region Vision Zero Safety Action Plan and adopted that. That was a massive effort, as most of you know. We've also completed 6 linkage studies in this time frame in Voorheesville, Cascatun, and Albany County, in Colony, in Rotterdam, and in Milton. And we've completed 3 technical assistance projects and initiated 3 more, some of which will be reviewed later on in our agenda. And RFPs are out on the street for superload and resilience studies. So that's just a very high-level overview of what's in the report, but if you want more information on our performance and expenditures, it's all right there for you. And we don't need any action on that, just
Okay.
for information.
Thank you, Sandy. So we're okay to move on to item 4, action items. So item A, 2025 tip amendments, amendment number 1. Melissa Shanley, to present amendment.
Good morning. So every year CDTA receives federal funding to support our capital projects for the year. Section 5307 and 5339 CDTA receives as a designated recipient. Our apportionments came out this year in March, and then we approved our capital plan at the March board meeting. So this is to program our capital projects for the year in alignment with that funding and the approved capital plan. So some of the projects that required a change to the tip, I'll just go through them quickly and if there's any questions. The first thing is our Star and our Flex vehicles. We've had separate fleets, and we are looking, probably not this year, but just to consolidate time, to have vehicles that can support both services to allow for efficiency and better operations between the two services. So they'll all be accessible vehicles. So we're looking to combine those into one tip project. The passenger facility improvements, that's our shelters. So something else we're doing to some of these, it's not just actually a change. Some of them we're actually adding just the flexibility as is allowable under FTA to charge a portion to project administration to cover some project management costs that come internally rather than outsourcing. So some of these just to have that in there as an, to expand the eligibility to include that. The preventive maintenance in Saratoga, that was just a bit of an increase. Support vehicles, we're just adding the 10%, it's up to 10%. For the project admin. Sorry.
There's a lot of
Mid-size infrastructure, so this is some updates to two intersections, Washington and Allen. We'll be doing some improvements there, some regrading of the sidewalk, shelter pad, and then also some updates in Boston Spa. And then next one is, IT security. So this is just upgrades to IT security, cybersecurity type of infrastructure. One of our IT projects. And yes, so this is intelligent mobility. So this is something that takes there was a project. Right, so some of the TSP stuff, TRAPA, this is IT to allow more communication with the TSP and all of that, and it'll also be accessible to the municipalities. So this is a project that our IT department's been working on. This one is going to be related to our BRTs. And so there had been some older BRT set aside funds that had not gone into a grant due to Safe Streets funding. So this will actually just move some of those funds that had been intended for the red line to be used sooner for this project at this time. Those are our projects for this year. Any questions?
Okay. Seeing, yeah, that's a lot to absorb. All right, seeing as there are no questions, if I have a action to move.
I'll make a motion.
Motion, there we go. Just overwhelmed. Thank you, Mark. Second. Like. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed or abstained? Great.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to Amendment 2, Route 7 Traffic Calming, sponsored New York State DOT.
Of course, we've all become aware that there was the Safe on Seven corridor study that has also become prioritized into a DOT-led project to try to get some traffic calming features within the 40-mile-an-hour zone of Route 7 along the corridor, basically in the vicinity around Bellevue Hospital. The limits are basically St. David's Lane down to Mohegan Avenue or Mohegan Road. And this project was evaluated and does qualify for HSIP funding. And so we're bringing an amendment forward to get this onto the tip at the next policy committee meeting, as we're anticipating a summertime construction package ready for authorizations. And this is basically a timely action to get this on the tip so we can proceed with a traffic calming project and try to help with speeds down.
So a little unique, correct?
Little unique, a little unique. I mean, it's been done around the region in various places. Most recent other examples for folks familiar with George, a traffic calming project of similar scope was put there that was very successful in bringing speeds down over 10 miles an hour. You know, there's others around the region that we can point to, but they don't happen very often, but this is one that we do progress.
And it's utilizing surplus HSIP funds. How,
Okay.
no, I was just gonna ask about how this plays into the SS4A application that was going to be made between the state and the town of Niskuna. Is this in addition to, is this to supplement, or is this now no application?
No, I would say this is coming first, and that application is actually to build on this further down the corridor. Route 7 is a very long stretch of the same layout, and you want to get after the most sensitive area that we know of, but we of course support extending this further down the road as that application develops.
So the boundaries of this are,
We stop at Mohegan Road, and then the town is looking to extend further east from Mohegan. They have plans to get at least to Inman, and then they're evaluating how much further they can get with an SS4A application right now.
So this is designed?
It's well along in design. It's gonna be median treatments. There's gonna be essentially several medians sort of broken to still allow left turns strategically. We're still figuring out if we're gonna restrict any left turns, because there's a lot of public feedback that says they don't mind having left turns restricted in certain areas. So there's still some details we worked out, but it's moving along in design quickly. Yeah.
So it's medians, any crosswalks being added?
That is also being evaluated further, trying to figure out where best one could go and the justifications behind it to make it work. But that's still a question mark unanswered thus far.
And what about speed limit?
The speed limit will definitely be evaluated. We gotta see how successful the traffic calming measures work to get traffic to calm.
So when he says crosswalks, are you new intersections or mid-block crossings?
Good question. We're still figuring that out.
Okay.
You know, if a crosswalk can get justified, again, we're rapidly evolving on our side, and if a crosswalk does come to fruition, it would very likely be, if it is mid-block, it would very likely be a 3-color signal, like on the other end of 7 near Target. And if we can figure out how to signalize an intersection, then the crosswalk go there most logically. If you're gonna put a 3-color signal, why not put it at an intersection? So
Yeah, when we had the presentation on this, they mentioned where they would do coordination with all the signals. Coordination isn't the end all be all. You know, to me, coordination is, you're just gonna teach the traveling public how fast they need to go to make the next light green.
and that,
So you may not solve all your issues.
no, and
I don't think that's part of this.
the coordinated signals out of the linkage study were sort of they're considered a warrant of signals. But there needs to be other warrants in order to get to a whole coordinated system. So we're evaluating, just trying to get whether we can get a signal in this corridor.
Okay,
And then as the corridors extend, we'll work with the town and see if there are other locations where a signal could make sense, and then the coordination of said signals would have to be figured out if that's a good or bad idea. You know, like you say, if you-
Yeah, but the other thing that I've heard, not with this specific one, but in the city of Schenectady, for example, where we have Erie Boulevard, we have existing signals. Is that you may look to coordinate the existing signals. It's a little bit more rare, I believe, to install new signals and call them coordinated signals. It just, unless they have all these warrants, so it's complex. Talk about, I didn't know if, Laura, did you have any input, did you have any support or any comment you wanted to make, just as Congress doing?
No, just DOT's been really, really helpful. We're really highly in support of the project that they're doing. And we're just gonna keep chipping away at funding to try and make Route 7 safer, because I know a lot of people in this room probably travel it, so.
Construction will start this summer?
it'll be let and awarded to start next spring.
Okay.
You know, late fall, so we won't have time to get shovels in the ground this year. I mean, one thing too, possible signal coordination is, it would be we would strategically coordinate them so that if you are speeding, you're going to hit a red light, like, you know, you don't time them to encourage speeding, you time them to catch the platoon, you know what I mean?
yes. Yes, but like I said, just cause if you coordinate everything, after a while, the traveling public learns.
Right.
What the timing of every signal. So I just caution
You know,
You
appreciate
know.
that.
of using coordination in that corridor.
Appreciate it.
Can I just ask on the air quality, it says pending ICG approval.
That's the interagency consultation group. That's the group of air quality folks from the quality exemption code. So this one will be exempt because it's a safety project, but that's still pending.
Just one more question, the narrowed lanes, so you're going from Wentworth to
12 to 11.
12 to 11.
Well, actually, the outside lane, I think is 14, it's the old design of
Shared,
the bike goes in the lane, which no one knows, so we're,
14 to 11, 12 to 11.
Yeah.
And that leaves extra shoulder space.
they'll end up 4 foot for bikes, if I recall right.
Okay. And not to get further into it, I guess, but this is being coordinated a little bit with the CDTA. I know the CDTA is always planning on a possible future green line, yellow line, some colorful that we don't have.
Yes, if we.
I just want to make sure that we're not
For sure.
working in silos here, right? If we're going forward, if we're making the road narrow, only to come back and say that does not work for buses. And what we
No.
want to do in the future.
We've been coordinating, and if I'm not mistaken, at the request, we're removing the bus pull-offs because they don't always function that well. The buses can't get back out of said pull-offs, so.
I would defer.
Yep. Hey, this is Mike from CDTA. Just wanted to note that CDTA is represented on that study. We have someone from the planning department that's making sure that the recommendations, work for our future plans as well as our ongoing current operation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, any further questions? Not, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Make motion.
Rob, second? Second with Mike, okay, all in favor? Any opposed or abstained? Okay. Amendment change, next we have amendment number 3, the enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities grant solicitation, 6 new projects. Sandy Ordred.
Want me to
Yeah, this is one of those ones that had to be on our letterhead, but they're really sort of coordinated through the MPO primarily, so.
Yeah.
Sandy.
So this is the senior mobility, enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities program. We participated with NISDOT main office staff that led a solicitation statewide for these funds. We evaluated, the projects related to our area. There were 7 applicants, requesting funding for 8 projects, and we ended up funding. I believe it's a total of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 projects, sorry. It's various sponsors in the region that support this work, so ranging from the hospitals, the Eddie Foundation Center for Disabilities, the New York State ARC and the Saratoga County chapter, Woodlawn Apartments, and then the Warren, Washington, and Albany counties chapter, which is an interesting arrangement of the NYSARC. So most of this is for vehicle purchases, replacing existing vehicles, but it's really intended to enhance the mobility of seniors, and persons with disabilities. So these are new projects that we'll be adding to the tech. Sure.
Any questions?
Is Warren, Washington extend beyond the MPO region?
Yep. Yeah, they're actually in the Adirondack Land Falls Transportation Council.
Question? All right, seeing no further questions, may I have a motion? Mark, may I have a second? We have John, okay, all in favor? Any opposed or abstained? Okay, amendment passes. Moving on to letter B, Title VI analysis, presentation, and release for public review.
Yeah, so I will turn this part of our discussion over to Carrie, who's worked on the Title VI update, and it's a short presentation of what we have learned. So go ahead, Carrie.
Great. So this is basically a summary of what's in the analysis document. The next slide. So Title VI says that no person in the U.S. shall, on the ground of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, denied benefits of, or subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. I will also note that the FTA has a pretty detailed guidance document that includes description of how an NPO should document their compliance. So a lot of what is in the document is following the description in there. So included in the analysis are boarding committee memberships, which is required in that guidance from FTA. The discussion of transportation patterns by different demographic groups in the region. And then an analysis of things that have happened since our last Title VI analysis. So that includes the TIP, the in-motion Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the PWPs that we've adopted since then, public participation efforts for things that have been going on since then, transit, and then recommendations from all of that. And then finally, a new demographic analysis based on updated 5-year American Community Survey data. Okay, so this, you probably all got a query from Leah in our office a month or 2 ago. So this is a summary of just the responses that we did get for that. So this allows us to, report that and comply with the description in the guidance document. Next slide. In the dot, so on the left-hand side are the categories by which we look at the transportation patterns for the trip to work. So we do have good data on the trip to work, so not as good data on other kinds of travel. So this is based on the travel to work data. And we compare the modes that people are traveling by each type of demographic data. And the table is just the race and ethnicity categories, which are what Title VI focuses on. So you can see that for some categories, there's quite a big difference in the drive alone categories and the transit categories. And again, this is the trip children. Next slide. All right, so the map on the right is the Title VI tracts that we have from our last Title VI analysis. And we are using that map to compare the actions that we've taken for all those things on the left. Next slide. We need some way to kind of classify different impacts of different projects, so this is what we have come up with, what we've been using. So on the left are kind of the labels that we have, and then a description and what we do with them. So the positive projects is kind of like the complete streets types of projects, based on the transportation patterns, showing that they have a greater benefit to the Title VI population than the not. And so we compare the locations of those projects to Title VI areas, the number of projects, and then also the dollar amounts of them. And the same thing for neutral, which is most of our program, which is repaving roads and, rebuilding existing infrastructure. And then a little bit of a different analysis for the potentially negative projects. Of which we have two from this latest tip. Next slide. All right, so this is kind of a smushed together table, so I could only have one slide. But the total projects and the total dollars are actually total. And then, so we do have some projects on the tip that we don't really know the location of them when we program them, so they don't get mapped, which means that we can't compare whether they're in Title VI areas or not. So then we have the number of non-regional, so those non-regional are the projects that we have a location for. Non-regional projects in Title VI areas, and then the dollar values of those. So we can see that for the number of projects, 53% of the non-regional ones are in Title VI areas and 70% of the dollar value of those. And then for the neutral ones, 36% of the number of projects and 81% of the dollar value. And I did put a note on there so that the Livingston Avenue Bridge is included in that, and that's a significant dollar value. Next slide. And here is again just the projects that have a location, but the mapped representation of their locations overlaid with the Title VI areas. Next slide. So let me just have a little analysis for the UPWPs. Most of those tasks don't have a location specified. So this is most of the latest projects and then the parenthesis projects by year of the UPWP. So some of the projects are, they roll over and so they're showing up in both. Next slide. Public participation, we discuss how we address Title VI in those. So we do a demographic scan prior to developing the scope to help us develop our participation plan. And then we publish the required policies to our website. We also discuss in here what we did for public participation for the TIP update and what we did for public participation for the in motion metropolitan transportation plan. And then transit is a very simple discussion. CDTA conducts their own Title VI analyses periodically, and they last did theirs in 2025 when they expanded their service area to include additional counties. And so the map on the right is our Title VI area overlaid with CDTA's transit route. Just two simple recommendations to continue to evaluate and propose ways for boards and committees to better reflect regional demographics, and then to continue to update the Title VI analysis over time. And final slide are the new demographics. So the new 20 to 24 American Community Survey data did actually come out. In the document, we show the categories on the left, and then the new Title VI map is based on the minorities, so the other side, Hispanic and Latino, Oregon, and then race. And I will note that this does look different from the last map because we don't do environmental justice anymore, and that included poverty. So this is just the Title VI strictly. And that's all I have.
Thanks.
Thank you. So, Mark, were you involved with CRPC with some of the data? What I thought
Not for this.
No, I didn't know what kind of demographic data that it pulled together.
We try to avoid Title VI at all costs.
So 2 items here. We have a draft resolution and a draft title analysis. We want to both, or we just need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the draft and release it for public review.
Okay. So, as Sandy said, motion to approve the draft from you. Okay, we have Melissa. Thank you for making the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Mark and Greg. Okay, thank you. All in favor? The opposed or abstained? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to C, roadway departure safety action plan project recommendation.
Yep, this will be carried again.
Carry again.
The solicitation was due recently. We received 4 applications from within our region. You may recall that NISTOT had kind of sub-allocation amounts by county, and we and most places in the state didn't fully subscribe to those amounts in the color solicitation, which happened last year. So they released it again. Our 4 applications were 2 in Albany County and 2 in Saratoga County. The last time around, we used all of Rensselaer County amount and almost all of Saratoga County. We've reviewed all 4 of these applications, and they are all on the priority locations map that ISAT put together. And that we also had on our website.
Hi, could I please have a large cold brew with milk and less ice?
Mike, you're not muted.
Oh, that is so embarrassing.
No worries. That makes sense.
We are broadcasted, recorded.
The downside of attending remotely.
No worries, no worries.
I think I had just said that we had used all of Rensselaer County amount and most of Saratoga counties. They're all eligible, right? And so, we are recommending here to NISTOT that the 2 Albany County applications be funded. We have that full kind of sub-allocation amount remaining for Albany County. And then, but also fund Saratoga County's projects. I believe that within Region 1, they didn't receive many applications still. I haven't heard statewide how that's looking, but I think there's a good chance that even though we would have used our full 4 county sub-allocation amounts, we'll still be able to fund the Saratoga County ones, but we aren't able to fully program yet because we're waiting to hear from the main office how the application should go.
I do want to add real quick that just preliminary conversations with my counterparts across the state, we have far more applications than most other regions. So that's kudos to our sponsors here, because these are important projects. They may not be the glamorous ribbon cutting types of projects, but they do have important safety benefits, and it's great to see our sponsors taking this opportunity seriously. So I think we'll benefit in the long run by being able to fund all of this. So it's good news.
Appreciate that. If somehow there is a larger subscription this round, that the preference will go to the counties that didn't get money the first round, but reading the tea leaves, it sounds like we aren't subscribing to the total available money, so stay tuned on if all of it gets funded.
Gonna be optimistic.
Yep. Looking good, but we'll see what happens.
do these have to go through the normal design report? So it's that same local, like,
Yeah.
okay, same process?
Which is what makes them a little complex because there's so many sites in each of these that, you know, each of the countermeasures is a low dollar value. So the design report becomes a complex multi-site thing that makes it a headwind, which is why I think we're not seeing the enthusiastic that we thought we would, but.
Okay. So we, motion needed to recommend the project for funding following the DOT eligibility review. Do I have a motion? John? Second? Rob? Okay, all in favor? Any abstained or opposed? Thank you. Correct. Okay, we are done with action items, on to discussion items.
Yes, so first up is our technical assistance program recent accomplishments presentation. I'm gonna turn that over to Ginger and just give me a second to queue up your slides.
No problem. All right, good morning, everyone. It's been 6 months since we did a technical assistance program update, so we're overdue. We completed 3 more tech assist projects for member agencies lately. And we'll give you a brief update on all 3, starting with, if you want to go to the first slide here. North Greenbush. So last year we did a tech assist effort on Route 4 and on the parallel road, Blooming Grove Drive. In North Greenbush, looking at traffic and safety recommendations for those 2 roads. This is a continuation, a spin-off, part 2 tech assist for North Greenbush. They wanted us to dive a little further into some of the recommendations made in the first tech assist report. And so we hired GPI to prepare always stop, MUTCD always stop warrant analyses for 4 intersections identified in round 1 of the effort. So Transportation Council staff, we commissioned traffic counts at these locations. We collected site distance data, we pulled the crash records, we gave all that data to GPI, and they prepared always stop warrants, which are very similar to the signal warrants in the MUTCD. So none of these 4 locations met the stops, but the stop warrants, but it was still very good to do them. And I will note that North Greenbush is implementing many of the other recommendations from round 1 of the report on Blooming Grove Drive, reducing the speed limit and adding some new signage on that road. So that was North Greenbush always stops. Any questions about that?
I just ask, this picture is not a Photoshop picture, I'm just
That's a Google
missing
Street View.
how, is there a stop sign somewhere on this picture that's not
Yeah,
always stop?
so this is Blooming Grove Drive.
I can't tell who's stopping, am I?
Right, well, right, it's very, the sight distance here is very poor. So on the right is Snyder's Lake Road, and that has a stop
Right there,
sign,
oh,
and that's.
that's
the
where you
extra
would go,
stop sign.
yeah, that is
Right around there.
Sorry, what's the game plan at that intersection?
here.
So this didn't meet any of the warrants, because when cars stop, they tend to pull up very far ahead of that stop sign. And technically, per the warrants, they have enough sight distance. So we're gonna look into other recommendations to try to help here. There weren't enough crashes here either to warrant the always stop. But clearly that it's not a pleasant intersection to be driving through. So we're gonna continue to work with North Greenbush on the next steps. But yeah, if you need always stop warrants or signal warrants, we can help you through the tech assist program. Next up, we recently completed the Albany Airport traffic assessment. So the airport has been updating their master plan. They hired CHA, the consulting firm, to prepare the master plan update in 2024. It was approved by FAA in 2025, and airport staff reached out to us for assistance with examining the recommendations from the master plan that relate to surface transportation, relating to accessing the airport, the intersections around the airport, and general parking improvements throughout the campus. So we conducted another round of traffic data collection at all of the access points to the airport. We did parking utilization surveys at the cell phone lot. We did some field visits, and we also hired Creighton Manning to model some of the concept roundabouts that CHA developed as part of the master plan update. So if you go to the next slide, some of the recommendations we made in the technical assistance report were to expand the cell phone lot. We did the parking utilization study. The cell phone lot is often full. It's very important that there's capacity at the cell lot to reduce the curbside space usage at the terminal. So we do recommend expanding the cell phone lots. We had a recommendation to improve access to the E lot, which you can see on the right there. Currently, if you're coming from the Northway, there's a little slip ramp to get in. But exiting the E lot, there's no quick or easy or safe way to go back to the Northway. You either have to make a uncontrolled left turn by the cell phone lot, or what you should do is go all the way to the signal by the south garage to make your left turn there. But that's a very long drive, so one of the concepts we developed was to use this lot, which is going to be developed at some point. It's currently agricultural, but there's a development proposal there for a gas station. So as part of that, a two-way E-lot connector could be built. We had other recommendations relating to signage and wayfinding, but the main focus of the report was to study these two roundabout concepts you see here on the slide that CHA developed. We hired Creighton Manning to model them in Synchro and the Sim to determine if they would work. So the current intersection is two signalized intersections very close to one another. And the cycle length is very long because the Jetway Drive approach has its own phases. The long-term parking exit also has its own phases. And then there's also, if you're going southbound on Albany Shaker, there's two left turn lanes that have a protected left turn phase that's very long as well. So when we were out there in the field, we noted sometimes the cycle length could be over 100 seconds long. So that adds a lot of delay to the intersection. And also we just generally heard it's a pretty confusing intersection if you're approaching the airport. It's it's two signalized intersections close together, and it's challenging to know which lane you need to be in to get to the terminal versus the long-term parking versus the short-term parking. So if you want to pull up the concept one video, so these two roundabout prepared by CHA, this is the visualization that Creighton Manning prepared. Both roundabouts were found to work about the same operationally as one another, and both were much better in terms of delay than the current signalized configuration. So currently, the level of service at this intersection ranges from A to D, depending on which approach you're using. But in general, you have to wait a long time if you're exiting the long-term parking and turning left, or if you're coming from Jetway Drive. Both of the roundabouts will reduce the delay down to level of service A for all approaches. So this was the three-legged concept that was prepared. This shifts the intersection a little bit to the south. You can see the Jetway Drive approach is a bit north of the roundabout there. So this, airport staff were a little skeptical about such a big change to their main entrance. But the simulation showed that this would work pretty well. At first, I was skeptical that this might be very bad for commuters, which make up about 80 to 90% of the traffic on Albany Shaker Road, just going past the airport and not accessing the airport campus. But this actually works better for them as well, because it eliminates the very long interruption for the southbound left turn. So on all approaches, the roundabout performed a little better. If you want to pull up concept two.
Where's the cell phone lane?
Oh, it's south of this, maybe a quarter mile south of it. Kind of on the northeast side of Albany Shaker.
So it's not in here, it's down.
Yeah.
Sort of also a viewing spot.
Is that what you're talking about, the viewing area where it's?
Yeah, people go there
Plane
and
spotters.
watch planes.
Okay, that's the cell phone, okay, I know that, I think of it as a viewing.
Yeah, it's the cell phone waiting lot. This is concept two, very similar to the three-legged concept, except this one is shifted further to the north, so that the Jetway Drive approaches, which are coming in from the right, also directly access the roundabout. So both concepts had some pros and cons. We ended up favoring this one because of the better and more direct access to Jetway Drive, which is very important for the trucks that go in and out. With the three-legged concept, the Jetway Drive traffic would need to go onto Terminal Road, which wasn't ideal for trucks. After we prepared these, we learned that the airport might have an interest in acquiring the Ann Lee home site, which is to the south of the roundabout. Down there, you can see kind of a little paved area, yeah, right there. So that's the former Ann Lee home site. The Ann Lee home was demoed. The airport might acquire that area for more parking. And so we may be continuing to work with the airport to refine these concepts, to see if there's a way to provide access to that site as well, using a signalized or roundabout reconfiguration of the main entrance. So that was the airport tech assist. Is over to Ethan. Any questions or comments about that?
I will say that the Shaker Heritage Society is against converting the Hanley home site into employee parking.
Okay. Okay. So I will turn things now over to Ethan for the Town of Colony, Loudonville Triangle tech assist.
Thanks, Andrew. So I led the tech assist that the Transportation Council did for the Town of Colony at the Loudonville Triangle. For those of you who don't know, is the five-legged intersection of Loudon Road, which is US 9, Old Niskayuna Road, Osborne Road, and Manand Road. It's right where US 9 comes into the town from the city of Albany or I-90. The intersection, it's a triangle, so it has three nodes at each of the points of the triangle, two of which are signalized, the top two nodes, and then the bottom one is a stop/yield control for cars that are going to Osborne or Old Niskayuna Road from northbound Route 9. It's a challenging intersection for a number of reasons. It's constrained both by narrow right-of-way, businesses and homes being pretty close to the roadway. It has a pretty significant slope, being high up on the northwest side by the school, and then sloping down as you head to Manand Road to the east. There's also some parkland right there, which can be challenging to try and either not impact or to minimize those impacts. Another one of the problems is that Route 9 is significantly busier than the other roads. It has almost twice the average daily traffic volume. So any impacts to make the operation of the smaller roads work better, you need to make sure you're not impacting the much larger volume of traffic on Route 9. There's also a number of problematic movements in the intersection. There's some conflicting left turns. There are locations where vehicles depart their lane to go around cars that are yielding to make their left turns. And for all those reasons, people have a feeling that the intersection is unsafe. And so the Town of Colony, Albany County, DOT, so the Transportation Council, heard numerous times about this intersection and how people have a desire to see some improvements made there to kind of reconfigure it to make it feel safer, but also operate a little smoother. And so there have been several investigations over time from some public agencies, even some private engineering firms we've heard from. They'll have a staff person who drives through there every day and is like, I'm just going to take 20 minutes and mock up a little sketch. So the purpose of this tech assist was for us to kind of compile all of those prior investigations and then do some further analysis. So we looked at a lot of roadway characteristics, we looked at crash data, we conducted turning movement counts so we could see where vehicles were going, not just at each of the nodes, but also to see every individual movement. So we know the exact number during a peak hour of vehicles that heading southbound on Route 9 are two right turns to then go up Old Niskayuna Road, or the number of vehicles who are coming west on Manand, going straight through the first light and then making a left at the second light to get to those handful of businesses and homes there. And we made a couple of recommendations about the existing configuration, how lanes could be potentially reconfigured, pedestrian access could be improved. But the bulk of the recommendations in the study were a series of high-level planning concepts for possible reconfigurations. So if I go to the next slide, the first set of concepts we looked at were potentially realigning Old Niskayuna Road, because if you can pull Old Niskayuna Road, the northern section of it, away from the triangle, then you can almost reconfigure it to be a regular four-leg intersection. So the first on the left option would be to realign the road almost exactly on its current alignment, just kind of making it take a little curve rather than heading totally straight where it meets Osborne Road. This would cut off the very front of the school's property right there, but the area is has a pretty significant slope even from the roadway up to the school. So that area really isn't that usable for the school. Retaining wall would potentially be required. But this would move it just far enough away from the rest of the triangle where you could potentially do even a stop and control. So we're not trying to coordinate multiple signals. The second option would be to realign on this Road just on the other side of the school. This would obviously have a greater impact to the school's property. And would be, adding a road close to the back of some existing homes. So for those reasons, this one, is a little more impactful, but it does move Old Niskayuna Road further away from the triangle, which gives more distance for cars to turn onto and off of Old Niskayuna Road without impacting operations at the triangle intersection. Kind of the, most unlikely option, but potentially the best for operations at the triangle would be to realign Old Niskayuna Road about half a mile north on its current configuration. So all of these options would include dead ending the existing spot where Old Niskayuna Road meets the triangle. This one pushes it, so that's then a long stretch of dead end road, essentially turns into a cul-de-sac for the homes that live there. And then Old Niskayuna Road would go to the east to meet up with US 9. There are a couple of options for where it could go. There are some undeveloped parcels through there where you could potentially line it up with an existing signal or an existing unsignalized intersection with the side road that could then be signalized depending on the amount of traffic. But these can be paired either with some of the later concepts that we'll look at, or they can just be done on their own to move some of that traffic volume and that intersection away from the triangle. The concepts that we hear about the most when we talk to people about this intersection are on the next slide. And that's just to turn it into a roundabout. Roundabouts are increasingly common throughout the region. And I was talking to my barber one day and I was like, have you seen this intersection? He's like, oh yeah, they should turn it into a roundabout, like without me even prompting. We hear about it a lot. There are some challenges with it. So on the left, Creighton Manning Engineering, that's one of those firms where someone just said, I'm gonna take a little bit and mock it up. They looked at making it into a single circle roundabout that maintained the 5 legs of the approach. One of the problems with this intersection is that you need enough distance between the access points to the roundabout that you need to move Osborne and Old Niskayuna away from each other, potentially having some greater impacts on the adjacent houses. But other than that, this one, would serve all those approaches. The 4-leg concept, we actually, just in speaking to random DOT staff, one person said, oh yeah, I have this random concept that someone drew up, 15 years ago, has been sitting on a shelf. So we included that in the report. This one, as you can see, does deflect Old Niskayuna Road on that eastern side of the school. This would be a stop control there at Old Niskayuna Road. This one of the problems with these single circle roundabout options is the access for the homes and businesses immediately adjacent to the intersection, particularly those ones on the bottom left side of the screen on that southern portion of Old Niskayuna Road that makes it a triangle, exactly those ones right there. You can have driveways go into a roundabout. It happens in places. It's never ideal, but it is a possibility. So you can do either 4-leg or 5-leg single circle roundabout here. And then the kind of more fun option that a couple people we bring up when we talk about this intersection on the next slide would be doing a peanut roundabout, which we don't really have here in the region. I'll show you some examples on the next slide of where they've been done in other places. But one of the nice things about a peanut roundabout is that they're really good at consolidating a lot of approaches without having conflicting movements. Because you can't just do 2 single circle roundabouts that close to each other here, because movements on the roundabout that's for the Loudon Road or US 9 could potentially cause the other roundabout to fail if cars aren't able to make into that roundabout because of that north and southbound traffic. So the two options for Peanut would be to put the two roundabouts at, two of the nodes. So on the left side, you can see an east-west oriented Peanut roundabout, which works pretty well to serve all of the approaches. It also would allow you to put in another leg to access the driveways for those businesses right there, which would be a road that is then dead-ended on either end. The biggest problem with that Peanut roundabout option is that, like I said, a majority of the traffic through this intersection is north and south traveling traffic on Route 9. And with that east-west Peanut, the south traveling traffic has to use almost the entire capacity of the Peanut to continue traveling south on US 9, which could potentially cause some significant backup on Old Niskayuna and Osborne roads. On the right, we have a north-south Peanut, which solves that problem of that impact for north and southbound traveling traffic. It doesn't capture the Old Niskayuna approach, which is why you can see it's deflected there, like in the DOT concept for the single circle roundabout. You would need to configure the westbound northern Peanut exit towards Old Niskayuna and Osborne Road so that there weren't conflicts for vehicles trying to enter there. So in this concept, all the vehicles traveling eastbound from Old Niskayuna or Osborne Road are actually entering the Peanut down at that southern circle, and then they can from there head south, east, or north. One nice option about this concept is that it does maintain those driveways along the current configuration of Old Niskayuna Road without having to dead end the road on both sides or potentially have them leading directly into the that north-south Peanut option is very similar to the DOT four-legged single circle roundabout option. But one of the nice things about this, the Tech Assist program, is that we can explore these more conceptual options just to see how they would work without doing a lot of detailed analysis. And I know Peanut roundabouts look kind of funky, so just to show they're not total pie in the sky. Next slide, Sandy. Here are a couple of Peanut roundabout examples in other spots of the country. So on the left, we have one that's in Worcester, Massachusetts, and one that's in Boise, Idaho. And you can see that the one in Worcester is much more compact than the one in Boise, which collects kind of a lot of bigger roads and splits them up. So these Peanut roundabouts can really be scaled up or down depending on the size of the intersection they're trying to serve. So the town has a couple of options to go from here. If there's a couple of concepts that they particularly like, they could start doing some preliminary engineering work. They could do a Tech Assist Part 2 with us, where we do some modeling like we saw with the airport to see if the concepts would be served, or if the town isn't quite sure what direction they want to go with the concepts, they could do some public review either themselves. They could do a linkage study through the Transportation Council, or try and solicit some feedback some other way. So if you have any problematic intersections, this Tech Assist was a lot of fun for our staff. So it really lets us get the creative juices flowing. So we'd be happy to explore, wild concepts for any problematic intersections any of you have. That's all I have.
Just one question. So the problem they're trying to address in Loudonville is traffic accident. What is the?
Yeah, so there are accidents here. The spots where people feel the least amount safe is making left turns, particularly people who are making left turns onto or off of Old Niskayuna Road up at that top left node. The cars, because of the angles that the roads meet, have to, if they're making a left turn, cross over the same parts of the intersection, which means only one can be making a left turn at a time. It also means that if there's any vehicles traveling straight through, vehicles can't make the left. So as usually two left turning vehicles approach, they're kind of playing a game of chicken, seeing who's going to get to go first. Then the people who are trying to go straight through the intersection get impatient and start going around them, and then the left turning vehicles can't make any movements because there's straight traveling vehicles going around. So that feels pretty unsafe for a lot of people. It has led to several accidents in that area. Then also for vehicles that are trying to turn left from Manan Road onto southbound 9. They have to wait until they just have a yield turn, so they're waiting for cars coming straight through. Again, cars get impatient and start leaving their travel lane into the right turn only lane to pass those left turning vehicles, which can then cause collisions as vehicles are turning left onto northbound. Route 9. There's also some capacity issues at this intersection. You know, all of those approaches are one-legged only, which especially for Loudon Road, which has an AADT of almost 20,000, is pretty underserved. And so there's backups and congestion on pretty much all the approaches during peak hours, especially when you start getting some of those conflicting left turns that really slow things down. So, yeah, safety and operation capacity are kind of main concerns.
Is the school affected? I mean, do they have, school zone be right there?
There isn't any sort of impact on the, there's no time of day speed changes on those roads for the school. You do see.
They don't have like a 15-mile-per-hour school zone or any
No.
kind of cameras up yet or anything like that?
Mhm. They do, vehicles do park on Old Niskayuna Road, just north of the intersection at pickup time. They kind of pull off, they're half in the lane, half on the shoulder, and that can cause some conflicts as cars are traveling up and down Old Niskayuna Road. So that could be another potential benefit of one of the concepts that realigns Old Niskayuna Road further away from the school, because cars could then queue there in that now dead-ended section of Old Niskayuna Road without being as much of a conflict for through traveling vehicles.
There's a comment from someone listening in as a kind of a bridge step between some of your ideas and big ideas like roundabouts. Person noted going left from Manand Road to Route 9 South is very problematic and feels very unsafe due to conflicts with people coming east on Osborne Road. A left turn signal would help tremendously.
Yep, so we include some of those lane reconfiguration concepts in the report for the current configuration of the intersection. Any other questions? I'll turn back to Andrew real quick.
Yeah, on our last slide, I just wanted to plug the Tech Assist program. You can go to our website and find the Tech Assist page in the drop-down menu at the top. There's a menu of Tech Assist offerings on our website and on the slide here on the right. Like Ethan said, if you have a problem, you have an interesting problem and you'd like us to take a look at it, we're always more than happy to through the Tech Assist program. New proposals are accepted on a rolling basis as resources permit, so reach out to us anytime and we would be happy to discuss anything. Thank you.
Perfect. All set with the Tech Assist program? All right.
Yes.
Moving on, summary of 2025-2030 TIP administrative modifications. It says that we have none this period.
Yeah, so I'll give an update on the software. So in the past couple of months, we've been migrating from the eStep software that was used for many years to do TIP amendments and TIP administrative modifications. We're migrating to new software. NISTOT has provided to all the MPOs in the state. Project trackers, the name of the new software. We're still in the learning process. We're working through some kinks. Some other MPOs have submitted some TIP amendments and are doing some troubleshooting as they go. So we're going to be submitting. We know we have a big backlog of TIP admin mods and amendment requests from all our sponsors. We have the backlog all organized. We're going to start going through that very soon and trying to get those submitted in Project Tracker. So hopefully before the next meeting, we'll have a lot of admin mods to share with you on the list. Yes.
Is that gonna be available to all the project sponsors?
So, like eStip, we weren't going to do that. What we were gonna do is continue to publish the tip listings on our website. Project Tracker does have read-only access that we could give to sponsors. So, if there were sponsors that were interested, we could talk about that. I don't know what the NISTOT's policy on that is statewide, but that is possible with new software.
Yeah, the main thing that the MPOs want and NISDOT have to be clear on is that, providing sponsor access is, there's still rules, so to speak, about how projects get changed in the tips, right? So there has to be some formal approval processes and things like that. But it does appear that there's at least some viewer options. So like someone like CDTA as a sponsor of many different projects may enjoy having the viewer access just to see what the data is showing. But it's the same data set that we're going to be publishing anyway in a PDF format on our website anyway. So we're still assessing the value of that. There's different MPOs operate differently across the state. The New York City region is very different than the Albany region, so. But there's a lot of, there's a big learning curve, we'll put it that way, on all of NISDOT parts, the vendor's part, and MPO's part at this point, so we figured, at least for the short term. We'll keep you all out of that. So we don't make your lives any more difficult than they need to be, but that is a possibility.
Did have view access in E-Step, which was helpful to be able to check the progress for where it is in the approvals.
Yeah, so like, that's like certainly NISDOT and you guys probably want the view access.
Now, the view access, is there the geographic component? Like, does it-
There's like so by geographic, you mean?
Well, like you guys already provided like an online map of the projects.
Yes,
Is this
there
someone-
is a mapping component in the software. We haven't even played with that yet to see how it is. Not all of the projects can be mapped, as we said earlier. I mean, there's definitely some project types that don't fit into a mapping scenario, but yeah, there is that possibility. It may, you know, as we learn more about it, it may evolve so that, you know, we don't have to recreate things here, you know. We'll see how the software runs first. The first step is they had to get CDTC versus CRTC correct in the software, which I was informed this morning they have finally done with the vendor after multiple attempts.
I did ask a long time ago.
Yes. So, you know, that's kind of where we're at. We're at ground level on the new software. So stay tuned. We're trying to make this as seamless for you folks as possible, but I will say this, if your projects are getting caught up in a situation where we need an action to happen on the tip or stip, something that's already been approved at our table. And it's just this mechanical step that needs to get done right away because you're waiting on something, just let us know. And we'll coordinate with NISDOT and the other partners to make sure that things flow, things that have already been approved.
Okay. All right, thank you. Now moving on, New York State DOT project delivery update, Greg.
Yeah, this month's been quiet for projects going with bid. We let a flurry of projects in before April. Now they're all headed to construction. Could be a pretty hefty paving season we've discussed in prior meetings. The only other, I guess, project of note that's in construction is the replacement of Riverview Road is getting underway, and so the road will shut down in the coming weeks to replace that bridge and get it up to a height that hopefully never gets hit again, so. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Status of regional transportation planning initiatives.
Thanks. So our Half Moon, Clifton Park, Saratoga County Route 109 study, is at concept development stage. We just had a SAC meeting last week, so we'll be running our ideas through NISDOT and Saratoga County engineering departments just to get a read on some of the ideas. The Route 7 corridor study that we talked about earlier has been officially completed and closed out. Thank you to Carrie and Tony Skuna and the team at NISDOT for all your contributions to that. The Boston Spa traffic calming study, the consultant is about to be selected. And the West Avenue Complete Street study has kicked off. Creighton Manning is working on that for us. Looks like the first project advisory committee meeting is scheduled for May 1st, or was scheduled for May 1st. That's already happened. Time flies. And we're just waiting on City of Rensselaer and the town of Stillwater to submit their MOUs so that we can start the new ones, but things are progressing on that front. We talked about the technical assistance projects on the regional planning initiatives. From the list, you know, the 378 bridge study, there's some final internal review going on at NISDOT, but we're going to be actually removing this from the list as it's moving into another phase. So that planning study has largely been completed. We're wrapping up the ADA project in Albany County. We are about to kick off the super load study. I don't know if you have a study advisory committee meeting date yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
Soon.
The resilience improvement plan, we're still accepting proposals for that. The proposals are due on June 3rd. We're going to be kicking off a ADA project in Scotia in a not too distant future. And then 787, we're going to also remove that from this list because really it's now into a design phase. So no longer in planning, but we'll certainly give you folks briefings of it, given that the intent is to have the notice of intent done by the end of the calendar year, as I understand it.
Ish, yeah.
Ish. And then our biggest initiative is gonna be our household travel survey for the region, which is actually gonna be beyond the 4 counties. We're gonna include the 3 new counties of Montgomery, Washington, and Warren that we're adding into the regional travel demand model. So our household travel survey that underlies our regional travel demand model dates back to the 1980s. Hasn't been really updated since that time in this post-COVID universe. With different travel needs in the region, it'll be a good data source. Likely complemented at some future time by some big data sources. Because we really don't have one good data set anymore. There's gonna be multiple things that kind of feed into travel demand. And since we're not as familiar with Montgomery and Warren and Washington, just getting that baseline of information will be important as we continue to build the model, and that's gonna be a major project for this year. That's it. That's the status of planning and
Okay, terrific. Moving on to regional and local planning updates. Back to Transportation Council.
Yeah, so Donna is here today because we talked at our last meeting about the air quality conformity analysis, and there were some questions from members about why do we do this? What is the purpose of it? What's the meaning of it? So I asked Donna to kind of speak to that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. I'll stand up here, and for those that don't know me, I'm one of the planners in the New York division, and one of the hats that I wear is being point of contact for transportation conformity for any areas of the state that are subject to it. So I apologize for no slides or visuals because it would make this easier to understand, but we have kind of a long process in our agency at the moment for any slides that need to be shared at a public meeting. So I did want to make sure that I addressed Sandy and the members' concerns in a timely manner and hopefully answer any questions that you have about why you still have to do conformity. So I'll provide a little bit of an overview about how we got here. CDTC at the time was designated as non-attainment for the 1997 8-hour ozone national ambient air quality standard. That was back in 2004. And just as an aside here, that non-attainment status is what made your MPO area permanently eligible for CMAQ funds that are handled through the statewide solicitation process. So just keep that in mind. But getting back to conformity, that non-attainment designation is what required CDTC at the time to demonstrate conformity of its plan and tip. The Adirondack Glens Falls Transportation Council, AGFTC, because they cover the northern portion of very northern portion of Saratoga County, was also impacted, and then the non-MPO areas of Montgomery, Greene, and Schoharie counties that are not part of an MPO also were included. Non-attainment area designations generally follow county boundaries, so that's why that was the case. And for those that have been around the table back then, I believe, Sandy, that the CDTC at the time did the required regional emissions analysis for the whole non-attainment area.
Yep.
So what that regional emissions analysis would show is you model all of your plan and TIF projects that are in your fiscally constrained documents, as well as for AGFTC and those in the surrounding non-MPO areas, to make sure that you had to make sure that it didn't exceed the motor vehicle emissions budgets that are part of the statewide implementation plan, which is a document that New York State DEC had to submit to EPA on how they would attain the standard. Now, CRTC and the rest of the area were designated attainment for the more stringent 2008 and 2015 standards. So the standards get more stringent over time. EPA is required to review the standards at least once every 5 years. So again, CRTC and the surrounding areas were designated attainment for the more stringent standards. And in 2015, the 1997 standard was formally revoked, which for that moment it seemed that would remove conformity requirements for your area. And then in 2018, there was a court decision, and I won't get into the nuances of the lawsuit, but the South Coast Air Quality Management District in California sued EPA challenging their implementation of the 2008 ozone standard. And the basic ruling of the court was that, this is the district court ruling, circuit court ruling in DC. And EPA, the ruling basically EPA, when they implemented the 2008 ozone standard, again, more stringent than 1997, did not have adequate anti-backsliding requirements. So basically, the anti-backsliding requirements are designed so that even if your area achieves attainment, you don't suddenly go back to creating more pollution or potentially creating a new violation. So, and one of the anti-backsliding requirements that the court ruled was still in the Clean Air Act was that conformity still had to be demonstrated, regardless of the fact that the 1997 standard was revoked. So, this decision affected your MPO, many areas around the country, and 4 of your peer MPOs in New York that had not had to do conformity for a while. Buffalo, Rochester, Poughkeepsie, and Watertown. So we refer to these areas as orphan areas for conformity purposes. And initially, it looked like your MPO and the others would have to do regional emissions analysis again and fire up your travel demand model for this purpose and run MOVES, which is the EPA's emissions model. And we actually brought a training in for the MPOs throughout the state. It was held in this very room in the summer of 2018. And shortly after that training, EPA determined that the emissions analysis was not required. And the reason for that, legally, we were past 1 year after the revocation of that 1997 standard. So regional emissions analysis would not be required. But there are still conformity requirements in place, and EPA's guidance specified those. So you do have to demonstrate fiscal constraint as part of the conformity determination. There's a little bit of nuance about fiscal constraint requirements, which you are meeting. And you also have to go through interagency consultation, as Andrew talked about earlier, to determine non-exempt versus exempt projects for conformity purposes and identify regionally significant projects. So then the interagency consultation involves us, FHWA, FTA, EPA, NISDOT, and New York State DEC to make those determinations. And there are 3 main things that would trigger the need for new conformity determination. So plan or tip updates. I'm talking about full updates for you or for AGFTC, as well as amendments that add regionally significant projects to your fiscally constrained plan or tip. We're not concerned with illustrative projects for the purposes of conformity. And so the vast majority of projects, and this is true throughout the state, the vast majority of projects in fiscally constrained plans or tips are deemed exempt, and we have that, that code is noted with the tip entry or in some cases long range plan. And the trigger here, and I think that was part of the need for this upcoming conformity determination is the addition of the I-787 project to the fiscally constrained long range plan. And so it's deemed to be regionally significant because it is on a major transportation facility, and the scale of whatever potential alternatives are analyzed in the NEPA process would be quite significant. So this would be your only non-exempt project in either fiscally constrained plan or tip. And so that's the trigger here. And I do understand that this is a documentation exercise. It doesn't impact your decision making about projects here at CRTC, or the programming, or you don't gain data from this about emissions impacts. But and on our end too, we're keeping track of all of these different projects from all these MPOs that are being submitted, and I definitely it does that paperwork on our end too, but we do have to continue to comply with the court order here, and that was just recently reaffirmed. I've talked to my headquarters about this. So the good news, I mean, we do have a good template that was created by EPA and FHWA nationally to help MPOs meet the requirements. CRTC and AGFTC are using that template. From where I sit, NISDOT main office has provided a lot of assistance in keeping things flowing, for making sure necessary consultations done for all the MPOs, and making sure that the interagency consultation process does sign the correct exempt codes and allows you to keep projects moving. And Sandy and the staff here really are doing an excellent job just submitting the proposed TIP and FTP amendments for interagency consultation in a timely manner. And, I recognize that's an extra step and it creates more lead time that you need in order to amend this project into your long range plan, but it is something we have to do. I'm really trying to make it so that for these orphan areas, that conformity is beyond reproach, so that when we go further into the project development process, questions don't come back. You don't have to regather as a committee to take some sort of action, and Sandy and the staff don't have to answer questions further down the road about conformity, so that Greg and others in ISAC can accurately say on the federal environmental approval worksheet that this comes from a conforming plan or conforming TIP mainly. And yeah, that since there is no regional emissions analysis here, that you don't get needless questions down the road, you're able to proceed with further steps in the project delivery process. So that's my goal for maintain the conformity process here. And yeah, I'll just note the court decision affected around 82 areas around the country. Many of those areas were already maintenance areas though for the 1997 ozone standard, and they're coming to the end of their 20-year maintenance period. So when you're in maintenance, you have to continue to do conformity for 20 years. Unfortunately, here in New York, where all the areas are non-attainment, there was not a maintenance plan in place, which would have at least given you a definitive end date for these requirements. And there's a legal catch-22 here because EPA legally cannot approve a maintenance plan for revoked standards. So New York State DEC has explored that in the past. And so there are a couple of pathways that are being discussed about, getting New York MPOs that are affected by this decision out of the conformity requirements. One of them is a legislative path, which is outside of my purview. There definitely have been discussion with Congress in the past about amendment to the Clean Air Act that would change the requirements for ozone non-attainment areas and what revocation of standards means. So I don't have anything I can share more about that. But the other pathway that your state DEC is exploring is there may be a way to essentially go from non-attainment to potentially attainment for conformity purposes. It's something that's been tried in Texas. There's still a lot of legal questions being worked out there, but that is being discussed, and I would encourage you as the MPO members to continue to ask questions. I recently talked to DEC, and they said that that's helping them have this discussion with EPA if they're right questions from the MPOs. So Sandy, please continue to ask me questions about this, and certainly Nicole is your planning liaison. If you can relay any questions about this to me, I wish there were a way out of these requirements for you, but that's where we are now. We do have to continue to comply with the order.
Okay,
Thank you.
a lot of information. Yeah, any questions? I went through that very fast without any visuals.
Yeah, so, again, we have the draft conformity document out for public review right now, and Gautam's correct in saying that, the trigger here. Interesting, there it goes, is the adjustment on the project list that's in our in motion plan, which is gonna be adding in the 787 project. And in order to fit that into the fiscal constraint list, we've got to move some to illustrative. So there's a number of bridge projects that DOT had in the list. We also are removing, for the time being, the intermodal center because Albany County is pursuing that project for at least the short term. It may come back in the future if something doesn't come to fruition with that, but so those are some of the adjustments we're making to the project. So that's what's triggering some of the actions you're going to be taking this year. It may not be the last time we come to you with air quality conformity first and adjustments to TIP and or MTPs later on. But we just wanted to give you that context, because this is the only non-exempt project we have in our list right now. Obviously, that means it's triggering a big environmental impact statement process. So it's just a lot of requirements, we'll put it that way. So hopefully that helped answer some questions about that process. And that's all I'm going to share on council updates. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Moving on to the CDRPC, Mark.
Well, after that example of the tragedy of federal compliance, I have some better news. Save the date, October 16th, our annual planning and zoning workshop, and it'll either be at HVCC or the Mastery Center, pending what happens to the Mastery Center. Some things that are gonna be coming out in our upcoming data news. We have released, and this is the work product that we did for the Transportation Council, a story map with demographic, household, and employment projections for the capital region, so includes projections for counties and municipalities depending on the data source. Updated cost of living index, updated building permit info by municipality, building permits down by 15% in the capital district year over year. And at the next policy board meeting, we'll be making a presentation on a recent report that we released called The New Normal Transportation in the Capital Region. And that will examine different transit options and how things have changed since before the pandemic up to now. In addition, we are hosting an ongoing webinar series related to our climate action plan. It's going to be held, and it has already started, on the first Wednesday of each month through the month of October. All sessions will be recorded and made available on our website. The May's recorded session was battery storage and solar. Upcoming in June is going to feature our regional natural resources inventory mapper. It provides mapping resources if a community wants to do a natural resources inventory for each municipality in the capital region, and provides templates for municipalities to complete the local narrative sections of their natural resource inventory. So we hope that this tool will take care of about 80% of the work for a municipality to do a natural resource inventory. So more to come on that in June. July, energy efficient buildings, August, geothermal energy networks, September, local climate action planning, and October, sustainable land use. So we're free to attend and looking forward to answering any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. CDTA, Mike, are you still on?
Hi, yep, this is Mike. No new business this month, and I will spare you the remainder of my coffee order at Dunkin'. Sorry again about that.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yep.
DOT, Greg?
Sure, in Rensselaer County, Mark Saunders has recently retired and he's been replaced by Brian Lashway recently announced, so we have a new resident engineer in Rensselaer County for those that interact in that with those folks. And then last month to 787, we opened a fully staffed outreach office in downtown Albany. It's at 125 State Street, which is basically next door to City Hall. And it's open 8 to 4, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and 10 to 6 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we're there 40 hours a week for public walk-in engagement. We're seeing people come, it's not exactly a line out the door, but there are definitely daily visitors, and it's one more part of the outreach for the project. Besides the outreach center, as the summer festival and farmer market season gets underway, you'll see our table at a lot of those events. So that's it for this month.
You ever done an outreach center before?
Not in Region 1. The first examples were Syracuse and Buffalo, and have someone in New York City asking questions about it, so they're gonna do one down there for another project in the city, so. For major projects, it's a growing trend.
And follow up, I forgot to ask on the one, are there any peanut roundabouts in New York State?
I don't.
Doesn't seem to be.
You do have like a nice inventory of peanut roundabouts, for any of them in New York. I can follow up with you after.
Just,
I think there were.
you went to Massachusetts and you went to Idaho, so I was
They're
figuring
not
there
in
aren't
the
any.
region,
Yeah,
but I think there's one out in the Syracuse area.
There's one in Bennington, right at Bennington College in Vermont.
Yeah,
I mean, under Fuller sort of isn't peanut, but it almost could have been,
right, yeah.
it's kind of binoculars.
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, all right, good. Moving on, through 8:30, I know Mike had left, so skip to Dave at the Albany County Airport.
Geez, haven't talked today. Good morning. So, you might have seen, we had a busy month. We had the partial opening. It is very much a partial opening. We still have a long ways to go, but it is a breath of fresh air. Just going up, there's 2 escalators up, 2 escalators down now too, so we don't have single point failures, I guess, on the escalators when those go down. Andrew, you actually jogged my memory. Sorry to put you on the spot, but we are looking at the cell phone lot, expanding it sometime this year. So adding some additional space and then hopefully putting in flight boards, so people can see their flights when they're coming and going out, just making it a more useful lot. And then, you'll see this project kind of developing over time, but the wayfinding for the airport, we're well aware that we could be doing a lot better at that. So we have a comprehensive plan that's gonna start rolling out this year. There's 4 phases. I think it's over 4 years, if I recall correctly. But the biggest pain points are gonna be addressed in 2026. So we'll just, I guess, stay tuned for that as well.
Have you ever done any kind of survey of how many people in the cell phone lot are there for the airport?
No, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's a tough way yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know, I don't know how you do it, but
Yeah.
I never thought of that as a cell phone lot. I always thought that as a text stop, take a nap. I
Yeah.
don't know.
And that's a challenge you see at airports, I think, in general, because that's so almost the purpose for that type of lot is just almost a utility lot, but the main purpose is to wait for the flight to save space curbside. That's an interesting thought. I never really thought of that until today. Who's actually there for the airport? We just kind of assume that everybody's there for the airport, because it's not the easiest lot to get in and out of either.
Not at all.
That
was just,
uh,
all right, Albany Port District Commissioner John left.
I did want to just reiterate that the May 19th maritime workshop summit, thank you, is happening, and it's open to anyone in the capital region who would like to attend at the Capital Summit. So register for that.
All right, thank you, Sandy. And last, any local government? Anything going on with the sheriff? No? Okay, moving on to upcoming meetings, events, deadlines. So Sandy had mentioned the Maritime Summit. We have Freight Advisory Committee, May 13th, 9:30 AM. The Policy Board, June 4th, 3 o'clock. Regional Operations Safety Advisory Committee, June 11th at 1. And our next Planning Committee meeting is July 1st at 9:30.
And I just want to say one final thing, if you're a sponsoring community for a potential SS4A grant. And you're looking for an endorsement letter from us, the sooner the better, only because I'll be out of town, right around that deadline of the submission. So if you wait till the day before the deadline, you might not get it. So, just giving you that advanced warning.
Thank you. That is it. Then we'll have a motion to dismiss.
Motion.
Mark, second? Second, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, Mike. All right. All in favor? All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.